They were trying to get into the shit, but somehow stepped in the wrong pile? That's not a good sign for how this review is gonna go, is it? What's up, guys? This is Courtney with Half of the Birds of Deconstruction, and I'm bringing you my review for Tales from the Hood 2. And of course, always spoilers, but you probably shouldn't watch it, so yeah. This is a sequel to the first Tales from the Crypt that came out in the early 90s. It's an anthology movie that had one framing story or framing situation, and there were stories being told throughout. So this movie is somewhat similar, except it doesn't take place in the hood. Now, I have a lot of problems with this movie, and before I get to that, I want to at least start out with something good. Clarence Witherspoon doesn't reprise his role as Mr. Sims, but they got Keith David to do it. And Keith David is a great actor, very commanding voice. He's a well-known voice actor. And his performance and the way that he says the shit and gets into that whole hilarious line and the delivery for that is actually really entertaining. And Keith David overall is just entertaining in the movie. The rest of the movie that Keith David is in, however, isn't really all that good. It's not good at all. Where do I start? The movie was really heavy-handed in political commentary. I don't want to say that to make it seem as if the first movie wasn't, but at least the first movie had more variety, and the first movie was much more horror or thriller or suspense driven. And I love the first movie as a kid, and I mean I still own the movie now. But this movie, and it makes sense with the political climate that we're in today, and I try not to get political on this channel or in my videos at all, but it makes sense with the people, with it being the same team that worked on the first one, coming back and doing the second one. However, they were not subtle with the undertones at all. The first story is about a white girl going to a Negro museum, which the name of it was absolutely hilarious. It's like the Museum of Negrosity. Like, seeing that, I was just literally looking at the TV as soon as it flashed across screen, and I was just sitting there like, yeah, this is gonna be bad. I should probably turn this off now. And the white girl is looking for a doll. It's like one of those, you know the super racist cartoons that they used to make with like literally the black characters were the color black, big red lips, things like that. She's looking for a doll in that manner that her mom or her grandma used to collect and got her into collecting. It was called Golly. Her and her friend go to this museum because she heard that the museum has one. Museum guy, she says, look, my grandma started collecting these, got me to start collecting. How much? Not for sale. Okay, fine. They leave, they come back and break into the museum so she can steal the doll. After that, basically throughout that night, weird stuff starts happening, and essentially her friends are killed. She has a black friend with her. Her friends are killed, and the Golly doll comes to life and has sex with her. Yeah, those words just came out of my mouth. And then she wakes up to the museum owner having like tied her. She's pregnant, by the way. She wakes up to the museum owner having like chained her to the bed, and she basically gives birth to a bunch of golly dolls. You just see like them exploding out of her stomach, smacking up against the plastic, and it's just, oh my God. You guys can see where this is gonna go. But the framing story, that's just the first story. The framing story is that there's this politician. No, he's not a politician. He's like the owner of a robotics company, and he wants to implement, he's creating a law enforcing robot. He brings in Mr. Sims to tell the robot stories, because it takes those stories, and then with that information, it knows what type of people to go after. It's kind of like Minority Report, where by referencing stories like this, it can pinpoint who's going to commit a crime. It's actually really, really stupid, but whatever. That's the framing story of the movie, is Mr. Sims telling these stories to these people and having the robot record the information. So the second story, I believe, is, there are 3, maybe 4 stories. I think there are 3 stories in the movie. The second story is a gangster story where these guys are trying to extort this one guy for some money. He's out the game, blah, 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 whatever. And he ends up talking like big shit to one of them and gets him to, they're tying him up, beating his face in. And he ends up saying something to one of them about his mom or something like that. And he basically kills him. He doesn't shoot him. It happens off screen, but it's implied that he like punches him so hard that he kills him. I don't know whether he died from the punch or whether he died from his neck being broken from the impact, or the impact of his head on the floor. I don't know. That was their only way of finding out where all this money was. Because the guy used to be like a pimp or something, and he went legitimate, and he had a community. He had a community organization. That's what the money was for. And so they were trying to get the location of the money out of him. So after he dies, they're like, well, what are we gonna do? One of them is watching this medium show. You know, those like fake TV mediums that we've heard about, where they like pick somebody out of a crowd and they basically use like listening techniques to figure out personal information about them. Yeah, so one of them gets the bright idea that they can use this guy to get in contact with the guy that they killed, so he can tell them where the money is. And they kidnap his girlfriend as incentive. It's like, yeah, you're dead, but we can also send your girlfriend with you. Anyway, this guy is like a hack. And I don't know how. I still don't know how it's explained. But during the seance, he actually gets possessed by the spirit of the guy. And all of a sudden, this dude has like superpowers and shit. He electrocutes one of them. He breaks a glass vase, and telekinetically picks up the shards and shove them into the throat of one of the other gangsters that killed him, and basically rip his insides up. And I forgot what he did to the one that actually killed him. I think he broke his neck and like spun his head around. So that was the second story. Now the third and final story. Now in between all of these stories, like the head of the robotics company that's working on this robot, he starts out saying like really overtly racist stuff, and implied like he's the owner. He's also the owner of a prison. And early on in the movie, he tells Mr. Sims, "Your kind are very profitable to my business." You guys really had to be so heavy-handed with the shit. He's constantly doing unlikable shit. He said he has comments like that. He sexually harasses the female employees at the lab, groping them, shit like that. So the third and final story is basically this guy is married to this white woman. He's supporting this politician who wants to shut down polls in whatever city or state or whatever. I stopped paying attention by this point. I hope you guys don't hear the rain, by the way. Jesus Christ is coming down hard. Anyway, he wants to shut down the polls, and this guy supports him, but everybody tells him, like, hey, you shouldn't be supporting the guy that wants to shut down voting polls in this county or in this city or whatever. Which, I understand. Like, people have the right to choose to vote. Give them the opportunity to choose. So if they do so decide, hey, I'm going to vote this election or this primary or whatever, I have a polling area to go to. But because so many people disagree with it, he stands firm in his decision of support. Early on, we see that his wife is having visions of some boy that's coming to, she's pregnant, by the way. She has visions of some boy that she says doesn't want them to have the baby and this and that. And it turns out that the said boy, the ghost of the boy that she's seeing, is Emmett Till. And it kind of flashes back to the night that he was murdered. He was kidnapped and murdered. But Emmett basically brings out like the woodwork of well-known people in Black history. So Martin Luther King, the girls from the Baptist church that was I think firebombed. I'm terrible. I'll admit now, I'm terrible with history. And they even brought in like Mamie Till Moley. It brings all these people, and Emmett is basically saying, no, you have to take my sacrifice. Now, the thing that pissed me off the most, like I said, was the fact that they did all this, and for somehow, like, his wife ran out the house. She didn't even recognize him. She said, oh, this nigga raped me, blah, blah, blah. And basically, like, the Ku Klux Klan came and started beating the shit out of this dude. Basically, they beat him to death. And I was like, what type of fucking sense does that make? Like, he can't just recognize your sacrifice. He has to literally be beaten to death? I don't understand. So I was really, really confused by that. That's how that story ended. The overall story of the movie, I know I've been very, very long-winded with this, and I wanted to make this a really, really short review because I didn't like the movie at all. But I just have to explain the dumb shit that I saw in the movie. The ending of the overall arcing story was that the prison owner, the guy of the robotics company or whatever like that, he was doing a press conference. The reason why they brought in Mr. Sims was to tell these stories for the robot to record them. And he was going to have a demonstrating press conference like right then and there. After he tells the stories, he unveils the robot, and they hide criminals amongst the crowd. And the robot says, there are people here who are undocumented. Please turn yourself in, or I will take the necessary precautions so you don't harm America. 3 or 4 people stand up and they get escorted out. There are threats for level 1 to level 2, which are like low-level crimes like robbery or theft or whatever like that. Basically alluding like this RoboCop. I can't believe I just said that. But that's what he is. He's technically a RoboCop. They were alluding that the cop was gonna use deadly force if necessary to protect America. After all the dirty shit that we've seen this guy do, of course it's to expect that the robot would see him as a threat to humankind or some shit like that and starts shooting people. He shoots his 2 assistants, and because they were accomplices by doing nothing, and then he starts chasing him. Now, Mr. Sims pulls up, and the guy he's hit, but Mr. Sims, he doesn't realize he's hit until after he gets in Mr. Sims' car. But Mr. Sims pulls up, and then tells him, like, hey, this ain't no car, you're not alive. And like his body is in the back of the car in a coffin. And have you seen the first Tales from the Hood? You know that Mr. Sims is the devil. Some guys take the guy out of the car. This movie, like I said at the beginning, I didn't even have to do this long of a review. This movie isn't good. It's very heavy-handed with its political undertones and the message that it's trying to convey. And it's biased as hell. Like at least the first Tales from the Hood wasn't biased. Like, yeah, it had a racist story. but it also had a story about a gangster story about black on black crime. It also had a fucking political story about a guy doing nothing or choosing to do nothing. But the sequel leaned into the comedic aspect because everything was outrageously hilarious. And I don't know if that was their intent or not. I'm just gonna assume that it was. Because some of the shit that happens in this movie, you can't believe somebody actually decided, yeah, we're gonna make like a semi-serious horror movie with a pregnant woman impregnated by a life-size doll giving birth to babies exploding out of her stomach. What? I'm just gonna say that they didn't take themselves too seriously making this. You could tell it was low budget. And one review for it that I watched said that the original was like $6 million and this one was like $3 million. And you could tell, but the movie overall is very heavy-handed and it leans into the comedic aspect way too heavily, and the acting was all over the place. Literally, the only good acting in the movie was Keith David as Mr. Sims, and he even has like his the shit moment. But this one just fell flat for me, and I was really looking forward to it when it was originally announced that they were making it, because I forget the one of the creators' names. I know it's like Rusty Kundiev and Darren something. One of them, I think it was Rusty, he tweeted out that he was location scouting in Louisiana, either location scouting or they were going to start filming in Louisiana. And this was like earlier this year. This was literally like April or May. Tales from the Hood 2 just came out on Netflix 3-4 weeks ago. This is one of those movies that I won't even say it's so bad it's good. This is one of those movies that it's so bad you have to see. But because I said that, don't blame me if you feel like you've wasted your time. I'd say just check it out just to see a movie that's so bad, like you can't believe how bad it is. But then I don't want to put you through that. Hove did that, so hopefully you don't have to go through that. Jesus Christ.